When you've been living in an unhappy relationship, the disconnection from self may be less extreme, but it's probably still there, right? Because in either case, you've kind of been on a journey of denying your intuition, denying your feelings, trying to make what you feel not what you feel, right? And so the first thing we have to really look at is how far disconnected you have become from yourself, from your authentic self, from who you truly are at your core.
Hi, and welcome to Beyond Empty Nest. I'm your host, Jody Silverman, speaker, mentor, and Chief Dare Officer at Moms Who Dare. Every Thursday, I'll share stories of midlife transformation, happiness tips, and dare you to see the opportunities waiting for you so that you can make this next chapter even better than the last. If you're ready to dare, I'm ready to dare with you. Let's get into today's episode. Should I stay or should I go? It's a question that many women ask themselves in the secret space of their minds about their marriage. Earlier this month, you heard from my friend Jill Sharon Murray talk about big, wild love, which is all about self-love. Well, today's guest is going to talk about loving yourself enough to dare to discover the answer to the question, should I stay or should I go? Kate Anthony is the author of The D Word, Making the Ultimate Decision About Your Marriage, host of the critically acclaimed and New York Times recommended podcast, the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, and the creator of the groundbreaking online coaching program, Should I Stay or Should I Go?, which helps women make the most difficult decision of their lives using coaching tools, relationship education, geeky neuroscience, community support, and deep self-work. Kate is certified as a domestic violence advocate, a co-parenting specialist, and a high conflict divorce coach. And she is my guest today. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me, Jody. It's so good to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. And I know some people like Jody, this is like a month of love when the podcast is airing. Well, this is about self-love. And you
This
said it.
is.
It is. It is. I am not divorced, but I am a child of a divorced family. And I have learned over the years from my parents, it is not an easy decision. It's difficult. It requires bravery and courage and digging deep.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Nobody
Yeah.
comes to this decision lightly.
No.
Nobody wakes up one day and says, I think I'm done
Yeah. No.
at all. Yeah. In fact, most people agonize over making the decision for between like 2 and 4 years.
Oh, I didn't even know that. 2 to 4. Wow. Okay. And
Yeah.
before we're gonna dive into how to get started with this question of should I stay or should I go? But
Mhm.
before we do, I always love to ask my guests, what's the little backstory here? Like what led Kate Anthony to be this divorce coach?
Oh, I mean, who knows?
Lost track of
It
that.
it was a long journey, but essentially I went through my own divorce. I was in a very volatile, emotionally abusive marriage. And when we got divorced, somehow we managed to do it really well. Um, and, part of that was that we immediately agreed on mediation. We just decided off the bat, there's no need to do this in a any kind of contentious way. And I will say that I was lucky.
Mhm.
You never know who you're divorcing until you divorce them. I have friends and clients who would never have thought that their divorces would be as ugly as they are. But once they got into it, their husband, who seemed to be like the greatest guy in the world, turned out to be really vindictive and terrible. So, I lucked out. And it really is the one thing in my work that, like, you can't predict, right?
Right. No.
I've been
And
around it for long enough to know that you really can't predict it.
yeah. And I would think I mean, you know better than me the reason, but ego must play a lot.
Huge.
Ego
Ego
must.
plays a huge part of it. And, I say that it's sort of not predictable. I think that as an example, a friend of mine who's going through this, and the reason she's going through it is that she's a coach and she's married to someone who just would never do any personal development work, would never go to therapy, was very resistant to any of that work, and had a lot of trauma from his childhood that he just never worked on. And so, yes, it is sort of predictable that this person would not have the tools to
Mm,
manage when his life took a serious U-turn.
yeah.
And so, look, my ex-husband did. He has done a ton of work, a lot of therapy, a lot of stuff that didn't work to save our marriage, but it really did go into saving our divorce. So when we did that, a lot of people kept coming to me and saying, all my friends who got divorced after me, because that's how it works, would come to me and be like, well, we want to do it like you. What did you do? My answer was really simple, which was that we put our son at the center of every decision that we made, even the really, really hard ones, like
Mhm.
me giving up the house. I didn't want to give up the house, but it actually made sense for my son, for my ex-husband to stay in the house because as he put it to me, he said, "Wherever you go is home" to him.
Okay.
And because he was the working parent at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom. At the time, he was the working parent who was, he felt further disenfranchised. Like I was with my son 24/7 from the time he was born,
Right.
and he was in and out. And he said, at least if I have the house, it's one thing that's consistent. If I go off into some new space, it'll be further, you know, disenfranchised and weird for him. And I thought, you know what? I can't argue that,
Wow.
and so, even decisions like that, and also I was never going to be able to afford that house long term. So,
And this is a whole conversation for another time. I know I just interrupted you, but you're making me
Mhm.
I've witnessed
Yeah,
people I know get divorced, and thank goodness you and your husband were able to go right to mediation because
that's right.
the attorneys say, "Don't you leave that house," telling each one,
I
"Don't,"
know.
and then
I
you
know.
have your kids living with parents who can't stand each other.
Yes. And, look, we did that for we did that for
Sure.
5
This
months. We
starts
lived together, we lived together while separated for 5 months, but we were not it was not terrible, and it was, sometimes it was a little awkward, but it was not awful. But that's because we were really committed to
right.
making sure we were both equally committed to making sure that our son was,
So you so
protected.
you so when you had a decision to make, it was like, "Okay, so there's our son in the middle. How does this affect him? What's
That's
best for
right.
him?" What's in
Everything went filtered
brilliant.
through that lens, everything. And and I think it's easy for people to sort of say. There people will put their own agenda along with, "Oh, well, it is best for our son because blah 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 blah,"
Yeah.
right? And really that's using your children as a way to get what you want, which is
Yeah.
really not putting them at the center. So anyway, long story short, I really, after a lot of people coming to me and asking me how to do it, I sort of felt, well, let me figure out
Right.
because I know that my situation is unique, and my I only know my situation, right? I caution people to work against working with divorce coaches who are like, well, I've been through a divorce, so now I'm a divorce coach. That's not how this works. This isn't about me. This is about you, and it's about, you wouldn't hire an attorney just because they couldn't call themselves an attorney if they hadn't gone to law school, right? Coaching is a
Mhm.
little bit different. But, I decided to go to school and really learn about this, and, I actually started divorce coaching before there was divorce coaching schools, certifications, like that, those things did not exist when I started. So I was certified as a life coach, as a relationship systems coach. So I have
Okay.
work a lot with family systems. So that was how I started. And then as time went on, of course, I have gotten certified as a domestic violence victims advocate because unfortunately that it was necessitated.
Yeah.
um, and then I, was certified as a co-parenting specialist and as a high conflict divorce coach because, for my own professional development, could
Right.
continue to learn, obviously. But so yeah, I mean, that's sort of the long version of and also missing a few steps, but whatever. That's
Yeah,
sort of
but
how I
it's
got here.
and that's why I asked that because it's important for there's women out there that need to know, like, where did Kate come from? And
Mhm,
'cause
mhm.
we all see ourselves somewhere in someone's story.
Sure, sure.
Even I
That's
can
right.
see myself in a little bit of every guest story, even though I'm not divorced. Okay, so we're gonna get into should I stay or should I go? And so my first question to you is what do you think is the very first thing women need to look at when trying to make this decision? Answering that question.
Yeah. The most important thing to look at is themselves because
Mhm.
when you have been in an unhappy relationship, you know, if you've been in an abusive relationship, the disconnection from self is really extreme. When you've been living in an unhappy relationship, the disconnection from self may be less extreme, but it's probably still there, right? Because you have in either case, you've kind of been on a journey of, of denying your intuition, denying your feelings, trying to make what you feel not what you feel, right? And
Yeah.
so the first thing we have to really look at is how far disconnected you have become from yourself, from your authentic self, from who you truly are at your core. And that takes something.
Yeah, that takes
Um, it it takes a lot of work, and it's also really it's a little like catch-22-ish because it is hard to do that while you're in the process of self-denial, right? So, I think that if you're ready to answer this question, right, you're gonna be reading my book, you're gonna be
yes.
coming to me, joining my programs, whatever it is, you're gonna be doing that at a point where you're going, "Okay,
Yeah.
it's time." It's
But
time for me
yeah.
to start to seek answers. Now, I'm not gonna give you the answers, but I will give you everything in the book in particular that you need to know in order to make the decision when you're
Mm,
ready. So if you are at that point where you're like, okay, I'm ready at least, I talk about it like I'm willing to be willing, right? I
yeah.
may not even be willing yet, but I'm willing to be willing, right? If we can just get there, then you might have some space to allow yourself to start to drop in to what it is that you want, who you are, what are your values,
Yeah.
right? Who are you? And, as women, we have incredibly powerful intuition, incredibly powerful, scientifically proven now that we have greater intuition, greater sense of intuition than men do. Men have scientifically proving better problem solving skills. We know this, right? Good
Yes.
God.
Yes.
All they want to do is solve our problems. Um, but we do have better intuition, but we live in an entire system that is dedicated to forcing us to deny our intuition on a multitude of layers. If, I like to use the diet industrial complex as an example. You've got a $60 billion industry that is designed to disconnect you from your feelings of hunger and fullness. A
Mm, yeah.
$60 billion industry that is designed to disconnect you from self, right? So we are working against tremendous forces.
You write that and that's how you start the book off. And for those of you that
Yes.
are listening, I'm holding up the book. Go to my YouTube channel, find the video, or go in the link. You'll link it below in our show notes. You can get the D word. But the whole beginning of this book, I was just like, yes, yes. And then when I read that about the diet industry, I never looked at it that way about the diet industry, about the food industry. What it does
Absolutely.
with it is such a mind
Right.
game to get. You're right to get us to disconnect from how we feel. We are intuitive beings, so deeply
We
intuitive.
are,
All of our
right?
answers are screaming to get out, but we're muting it. We're putting it on
That's
mute.
right.
Oh,
That's right.
so
That's right. And so listen, doing this work is radical. It is an act of enormous subversion and it is going against, what our patriarchal system wants from us. And it's that much more important because of it.
yeah, it is. And it is an act of self-love.
It is
And
such
we're
an act of
allowed to
self-love.
love
And yes,
ourselves.
And here's the thing, this is what it's really interesting. At the very end of my podcast, I say, it's in the outro, right? So it's every week and it says, "You, my love, deserve to be happy." And the number of women who tell me that they just wait for the end of the podcast every week to hear me say that because it makes them cry.
Yeah.
The notion that women deserve to be happy, that we deserve to choose, that we get to choose how we live our lives and what relationships we're in is radical, and it is like I said, people cry when I say that.
Well, it's yeah, you know what? I never thought about and I've heard it at the end of your podcast. It's an affirmation. You're right. So with that being
Mhm.
said about women not realizing that they deserve to be happy, why are so women unhappy in their marriages?
How long do you
I
have,
know, right?
Jody?
This is only supposed to
Um,
be 35 minutes. So okay.
no,
Let me scale that
I
question
can
back.
answer that. I can answer it semi
Yeah,
quickly.
because listen, I'm going to tell everybody the link to your podcast is below too. And there's so much you dive deep into all of this on your podcast. So
I do. In the book, I have an entire chapter in
yeah.
the book. But, essentially because marriage is designed to benefit men on the backs of women's labor. That's the short answer, you
Okay.
know? And I know women who are some colleagues of mine who've read my book and they're really happily married and they have read my book and been like, "Hey, wait a minute." And, they brought this to their husband, right? And their husband said, "Oh, shit. Okay. It works for me, but if it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work. So let's figure this out," right? And that's kind of what you want in a partner. You want a partner who's going to go, really? It doesn't work for you? Ah, man.
No, it's
All the
true.
domestic labor that you do, you're tired by and you want me to pick up a little bit more. Now, most men, frankly, most men are like, screw that.
Right. Right.
Works for me. Right. I hear over and over and over again women's husbands who say, when they say, I'm really unhappy, their husbands will say, sounds like a you problem. I'm not unhappy. Everything's fine for me. If you're unhappy, I guess you should probably figure that out.
Right.
Well, we have figured it out, honey bun.
Yeah.
And, you
Yeah.
know,
And you're
that,
part of it.
well, yeah. And the fact that that's your response
That's
is the problem, right?
right.
That to me is the problem.
Yeah.
It takes something for someone to look at a system that doesn't work for their partner, but really works for them and be willing to, um, overturn it and overhaul it. So, I mean, really, that's it. Women are exhausted. They did a study. There was a study done once that I don't know who they are, but they did, and they determined that the happiest heterosexual cishet population group, the happiest were married men. The next happy were single women.
Oh my,
The next least happy were single men, and the least happy population group were married women.
that's so
So
sad.
married women are the least happy, and married men are the most happy.
Okay, we got a problem there.
We have a big problem. We have a big problem. And under the happiest population group is married men.
Very men.
Next are single women.
Single women.
Single women
Right.
are a lot happier than married women, which is
That
why many
that's
of us don't ever want to get married again.
that's really, really interesting. Well, oh, I didn't even get into that. That's what I wanted to say. That's what I don't want to let this episode go without the
Yeah.
statistics. Without
Oh, uh-huh.
okay. So and because I want to get into the next one because you talk the book is so incredible. I didn't even finish it, and I'm saying it's incredible. And I'm happily married, everybody. I got the book. I told my husband I'm reading this book. Don't worry, it's not a subliminal message. You have a problem. But there's the first part about looking at yourself, where to start,
Yeah,
that's powerful for anybody. I mean, that's
absolutely.
something as a life coach myself, supporting
Totally.
women in midlife to discover who they are again. Hello, that
Right.
process is that. You're applying it to for a different reason. And it could be a deeper, more difficult process to navigate when you've
Yeah.
lost yourself completely in unhappiness. Um, and the why women are so unhappy, I didn't know that whole thing, but but before I get into, because you talk about abuse and you talk about narcissism, you talk about the difference between narcissist and sociopath, and I want to talk about that because there's a difference
Yeah.
uh, that I didn't understand. But before you do that, the percentage of marriages, first marriages that fail,
Yeah. I mean, we sort of say it's
typically,
around 50%, but it's probably like lower at this point, 43 something. I don't
okay,
know. You've heard different
right,
statistics, but around hovers around 50.
comes out 50, which has been for a while now. What about the percentage of second marriages that fail?
68%.
68%. Wait a minute. Is everyone sitting down? Are you stop driving, pull your car over because Kate, what's the percentage of third marriages that fail?
74%.
I'm like, mic drop. I'm not dropping my mic. It costs too much.
We're not getting better at this.
No, and you know what?
Yeah.
Sorry, Dad, but my dad's been married 3 times. He's
Mine
an
too.
amazing human being. But you know what? And we know, and I don't know. I mean, I have my reason why I've learned for me why that might be because we're not going through that first part. We're not resolving our stuff
That's right. That's exactly it.
before, and we're going to bring that stuff into the next, and then
That's
we're going to be looking
that's it.
for the
Right.
wrong things.
Well, because if we're just like, well, he was the problem or she was the problem, and
Right.
then we just go and pick someone new,
Yeah.
as Bella Gandhi was, just on your show I'm sure
Yes.
she talked about, um,
Yeah.
that, we're using the same picker.
Yes.
And
Yep.
if we don't fix our picker, then we're screwed,
Yeah, so I know.
basically.
It's true, it's true, it's true, and I deviated from, this should I say or should it go, but I just think that's
No,
really important for everybody to know because
absolutely.
you know what? I always say this and when I talk about relationships in general, that
Mhm.
relationships fall apart, and a relationship is between 2 or more people. And
That's right.
everybody plays a role in the success of a relationship or in the failure of the relationship. It could
Yeah.
be 90-10, it could be 20-80, whatever the percent, but you have to take a look at yourself
Yes.
no matter what small percentage you
No
might have,
matter what.
right, no matter what. So I love that you start the book off with that. Okay, so women are unhappy because of the imbalance of
Yes.
of
In
life,
particular, domestic labor,
domestic labor. Okay.
and the emotional load, right? Also because women, we have been, especially, our generation, we have been out there seeking therapy, seeking healing. Like Gen
Oh,
X, we were like, we were practically raised by wolves. And so, we've had to do a lot of healing to overcome that. And overwhelmingly, personal development work is consumed by women.
women. Yeah.
And men are not joining us. And this is a plea to men like, my God, please join us.
Yeah.
Please do this work. Because what tends to happen is we outgrow you.
Mm.
And, I am not going to be with somebody who is not as, hasn't done as much work as I've done. Like it just doesn't work, right? Like I was talking about with my friend who's divorcing this guy who hasn't done any work,
Right.
you
It's
know?
they
And
can't.
here he is making his divorce really bad for no reason.
Right.
For no reason.
Other than he's just not there. He's not grown. He's not a grown-up man.
Yeah.
All right. So I have 2 more things I really, really want to get into
Yes.
this episode.
Great.
So first of all, you talk about narcissism and sociopath. What's the difference?
Um, so the difference is pretty mostly it's in self-esteem. Mostly, for the most part, narcissists are made. It's a trauma. And sociopaths are born for the most part, generally speaking.
Okay.
Sociopaths, narcissists have extremely low self-esteem. And what they're trying to do is get their sense of self by attaching themselves to really awesome people, which is
Mm,
why there's no shame or there should be no shame, but there's a ton of shame. But when really, really, really amazing, successful women often find themselves uh, realizing that they're married to narcissists and that they've been victims of domestic violence, and they can't figure out how this happened. I'm so strong. I'm so successful. I'm all of these things. Well, that's why you were chosen for that, because they want to attach. They're like parasites. They want to suck the coolness and wonderfulness out of you and have it reflect on them.
Yeah.
But when they still feel like shit about themselves because that's their general state, and unfortunately, it's not a movable state, then it's your fault because you didn't fulfill this contract that you didn't sign, but that they decided you were the role for, and you didn't fulfill it. And so now it's your fault. And that's when the abuse, right? That's when they turn on you. So, um, sociopaths, on the other hand, have very high self esteem and they attach themselves to whoever because it's fun. Sociopath and psychopath are not in the DSM. They both fall under the antisocial personality disorder
Okay.
diagnosis. And, if we're getting into
Yeah.
diagnoses, but at the end of the day, um, so on brain scans, right? If when a sociopath and a narcissist are shown photographs of people crying or in distress in some form, some way, neither one of their empathy centers light up. So neither one of them actually feels empathy. The
Okay.
key difference is that a sociopath, the pleasure centers of a
They
sociopath's brain
enjoy
light
it.
up.
Yeah.
They enjoy it.
That's icky.
Yeah. It's really gross.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
yeah, it makes me want to take a shower.
it's hard. That's hard to know. It's hard to it's
Sure.
when
Well,
you were
also, it
talking.
doesn't really matter because, like, I don't wanna be married to either one of them.
No, absolutely not, but I
Right?
like but I lo no, absolutely not, but I think we throw where I think for me, I hear the word narcissist thrown around
Yes,
all the time,
absolutely. Mhm.
all the time,
Yeah,
so it's and you talk a lot, you go in depth and really do describe abuse and what abuse can look like, all different ways, shapes, and form in the book. So, and that's important. That's really important because somebody needs to bring it to your conscious awareness. You're too close to it and you're so used to feeling and being treated a certain way that you don't even know.
that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, it becomes the air we breathe, right?
Yeah.
We really don't know that there's a different way, and that's what I really hope to do in the book is to sort of shine a light on it so that,
Yes.
like, we can have that sort of relief, right? That
Right.
stark relief. Yeah,
Right. So that some women so when the women read your book, they're like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. I'm not
that's
crazy.
right.
And
That's right.
yeah. And that's important. It's so important. And that's only going to help get back in touch with themselves. All right. So here's the big one. So what if somebody is thinking, should I stay, should I go? But really, my marriage is fine.
Yeah.
My marriage
Sure.
is fine.
Well, how fine is it if you're asking the question?
Right.
First of all, right? Because look, Jody, you're in a happy marriage. Do you sit up at night thinking, "Should I stay or should I go?"
Not once. No.
Right. Look, every once in a while, you might see your single friends with no, attachments or cares or whatever and think, "Oh, that might be nice."
No,
Right?
no. The only thing that I like about that is that, sorry, kids,
Mhm,
that they
mhm.
don't have any kids who took all
They
their
don't have
money.
kids. That's right. That's right. Exactly, right?
But you know what? But Kate, here's the thing. So you're right. You're right. If your marriage is really that good, why are you thinking about it? So I do, and it's interesting because I have a question of my own.
Yeah.
So and also I would also, which you probably would say without me interrupting you, is um fine isn't
Yeah. It's
fine
fine. Is
isn't
that what you want?
is that what you
Fine?
want? Life is just fine. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. No, you want to be
Mhm.
amazing and you want to feel we have one life.
Big, big wild love. That's
Big
what we
wild
want,
love.
right?
There you go. There you go.
So we do. We have one life, and I quote Mary Oliver all the time on this,
Yep.
right? What is it that you'll do with this one wild and precious life?
Yep.
This is it. This is it. One time.
Yep.
One time.
That's it,
That's
and
all
you
we got.
deserve it. So I do have so my question, all your work, all your years of work, and all the women that you've supported through one-on-one coaching, your group coaching, through your podcast. I'm sure you hear from so many women from your show. Have you had women with the should I stay or should I go and go through this process and realize, you know what? It could work in the end and
Yeah.
and that it works?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
have actually. Um, I think for the most part, like, they might have a husband, like I was just talking about, who, when they finally get down to it, that when they finally identify where it, like, why am I so unhappy? And they go, "Oh, I get it. It's actually he's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
He's actually a really good guy. I'm just not happy because of my own trauma. Oh, I didn't identify these things, right? I need to go and do my own work, right? Because we're so focused on the other person. Is it him? What's he
Yes.
doing? What the da, da, da. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, there's actually work I have to do. So what is it? So once we put that on ourselves and we start to do our own work, it might end up that things shift in the relationship. We might realize that we're actually really bad communicators. We might realize that, like, oh, we actually have some work to do. Like, this is not all his fault or whatever. Um, and they might bring things and say, you know what? I would be so much happier in this marriage if I wasn't exhausted all the time. And I feel like I'm a banshee and a nag and I don't want to be that person. So we need to make some changes in our relationship,
Mhm.
and if they have a spouse who's like, "Absolutely," because I absolutely believe that if a relationship doesn't work for one person, it doesn't work,
Absolutely.
period.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So if you have a spouse who's receptive and who says, "Oh my god, you know, this feels fine for me, but this doesn't work for you. I love you. You have to be happy too."
Yeah.
Then, like, dude,
That's it.
wonderful. That's it, right?
Yeah. But you gotta start. I mean, if that question, "Should I stay?" goes back to it. Should I stay
Mhm.
or should I go? If that question is even there,
That's right.
Kate is your go-to. She's your go-to
Mhm.
expert. She's your go-to coach for this. So,
Yes.
definitely
Thank
check
you.
all the resources below in the show notes. And, I really enjoyed this conversation. It's important to have a conversation when you talk about love.
Yeah.
Divorce is part of it, and you can't just talk about all the rosy and all the good and all nobody that's not real life. So,
No.
thank you for shining the light. I thank you for your amazing book, and I thank you for saying
Thank
yes to
you.
be part of our show and our community.
Thank
Um,
you for having me, Jody. It's so good to finally
yeah,
talk to you in
no,
person.
I know you followed. I say this all the time. I get the luxury of meeting my guests before we hit record. And 9 out of 10 times, I guess I've watched them on social media. I feel like they're my friends, but yet I've never met them yet. So this is it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um, all right. So nobody gets out of Beyond Empty Nest without leaving the audience with a dare. A dare
Yeah.
is meant to
Yes.
stretch you out of your comfort zone, to have you discover new and fun, different things about yourself, sometimes difficult. So, Kate Anthony, what is our dare?
Our dare is really around of connecting with self. In my book, I have a few ways that you can do that, and so your dare is to, as you move through your day, start to notice your gut responses to various things. Because the very first response you have, that is your intuition. That's the right. And then you're going to have all sorts of pile on after, but not that. It's
The
the
first
first
one.
one. And so it's a muscle that I want you to start exercising. So you're going to start to notice your gut responses to things. Then you're going to follow through on some of those impulses, right? So if you have an instinct to change seats on the subway or the bus, do it. You probably know something. If you feel that someone isn't being truthful, ask them. If you get a good feeling about someone at the grocery store, smile at them, say hi, right? Start to begin the process of trusting your instincts and then acting on them.
I love that.
And then if you want, write down and notice any feelings that you have about it. Was it hard? Was it fun? Were you right? And just journal about the experience. If you're not a journaler, don't worry about it. Just
Yeah.
notice throughout the day what your instincts are and if you can follow through on them, what that provides for you.
I love that. And we call that dare to connect with your inner guide. That's what we're calling
Yes.
it. And this is a great exercise. So I dare you all to dare it. I double dare you to do it. So yes. So thank you
Good.
again, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you
And,
so much, Jody.
and I'm super excited about this show and all the shows coming in 2024 and our past shows in 2023. So all of our episodes are here for you to view. And the goal of each one is to provide you, our amazing audience, with one tip, one strategy, one light bulb moment like, oh my God, I get it now from every single episode. All you need is one. All you need is one from each episode, one from any episode to change your life. So, what was it during this conversation with Kate? What was your moment, your takeaway, the tip, the strategy, your aha light bulb moment? Share it with us. Send me a message. I'll get it to Kate. Leave a review, however you want to get it. Follow us on social media, but let us know because that's why we do what we do. We are daring to support you in creating the best midlife chapter you can. So don't forget to listen to our past episodes and tune in next week for a brand new episode. And as I always say, dare on. Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond Emptiness. Head over to jodysilverman.com for full show notes, more information, and additional resources. Speaking of additional resources, I've got a great one for you in the show notes below. So if you've enjoyed today's show and are ready to embrace this midlife chapter, then you're going to want to grab our featured resource called the Self-Talk Cleanup Challenge. You may not think so, but to quote our friend Oprah, the one thing I know for sure is that negative self-talk and thoughts are what's keeping you stuck in fear and lacking confidence to take the leaps in midlife that you desire to take. When you grab this resource, you'll receive the exact exercise my first coach took me through. It's simple, yet powerful. In addition, I'll send you a few other tools and tricks to help you knock out the negativity when it shows up, thereby increasing your confidence and your overall happiness, allowing you to have fulfillment and fun in midlife. You deserve it. So go ahead and grab your copy of the Self-Talk Cleanup Challenge, and I'll see you next Thursday. Until then, dare on.